You did it.
We did it. I don't think I need to start over. Sorry, recording. There's the agenda. All right, we go next. Sweet. So where we've been, this really started 2 years ago, when this grant first became available. I saw it, looked at it, and really thought there are some opportunities along the trail to do something. And what that initial proposal was, what I thought would be appropriate was, resurfacing between the 92s and the end 10 miles of the trail. That was my initial proposal. We obviously didn't get it, but it was nice when I had my debrief this last October. They kind of gave me pointers on it, and I was really going into it saying, well, if I'm not even close, I'm not even going to bother again. There's a lot of work to do. But they basically told me, I think the quote was, "You're in spitting distance," and I was like, okay, so to me, pedal to the metal. Let's do some, let's get the right people in here. Let's assemble a team and let's talk about a huge project, not just, what I had proposed. And so that's kind of where we had started, which brought us to here, which brought us to the past couple of meetings we've had, a lot of discussion, a lot of input on, things people want to see, and really the effort we put forward now and the team put together is, this isn't possible with just me. I'm just being honest. So I really appreciate the effort, that Mitch and CJ and Brad have provided to this point. And even to date, we've talked about letters of support. I've reached out to folks, and what's great is we've already been getting them back. So we have them secure, the DNR has already written one, the Mid-Trail Property Owners Association, nice, there you are. Wrote one. I have one from the Office of Environmental Stewardship and the Scenic Byway at the state level. And so they're starting to roll in, which is just great. And I genuinely appreciate it. To me, it just shows a really, not just, community support, but even all the way up to the state level. So I'm hoping to harass our legislatures too. So if any of them watch this, I'm coming for you, for support at least. So that's kind of where we're at right now, as far as to this point. We go next. And I think something we really want to hammer too is this isn't the end. This isn't the last meeting about talking about this project. Even if we don't get this grant, this isn't the end about talking about all these opportunities that we've gone over. This is an opportunity to do a whole bunch of stuff at once. And if we don't do that, what we've identified is a whole bunch of stuff that now I know I can save up for. I can go after different opportunities. And so really, I think, the input we've received on this is great. It's amazing. And I genuinely appreciate it. And I thank everybody for their input. We just want feedback from everybody, and we'll keep talking about this as this goes on. This is not the end. So some of the things that we heard, you can see, overall what we heard was just overwhelming support on the whole. Said, hey, here's an opportunity to do some stuff on the Gunflint, and everyone went, great. Which I really appreciate. We have the letters of support, like I said, already in, and I know I've talked to a lot of different people who, have offered to send them as well. So I appreciate it. The natural resource aspect of the Gunflint, how it looks, how it feels, those intrinsic qualities you hear about and talk about a lot is what we heard a lot, and really preserving those. No matter what we do, we want to preserve that. We're not talking about blowing in a 4-lane highway. It's the last thing I want. I'm probably assuming it's the last thing you want. And so we are not doing that. A lot of things too involve, additional pull-offs, some work at trailhead. South Lake Trail came up a lot. Which is why we hold these feedback things. I didn't know any of that. And so I know that because you said it. And so thank you. Again, some stormwater treatments, some work, through the mid-trail area to improve safety, address traffic speeds. And then really too, at the bottom, nobody said, whoa, 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 stop. Which I think is a testament to how we're doing this, what we're proposing, what you all are telling us, and what we're providing to you. So thank you again. So the things that we're talking about, again, starting in the top left, we're not changing lane widths. We're not talking shoulder widths. The exception to that will be as we get into the mid-trail discussion. So we'll go over some of those things there. But overall, when I'm talking between the 92s, when I'm talking the mill and overlays, near Clearwater Road, and south down to Trout Lake Road, none of that's changing. Resurfacing it. Nothing's getting wider. We want to preserve the alignment, preserve the character of the road. So really, like I said, some of those opportunities, right now we've identified resurfacing, Pine Mountain Road to Clearwater Road, 92 East to 92 West, from the Cross River Pit to the end. I mean, you start adding that up, that's half the trail that's going to get new pavement and badly needed. All of us have driven those sections. It's gross. It's frankly embarrassing from an engineering perspective that they're like that. So, that's what we're talking about. You can look down, near Hedstrom's Mill. We want to
is here.
as you come down the hill for the trucks to get in. We want to talk about intersection safety where County Road 55 crosses a few times and County Road 60. They're at goofy angles right now. That's not safe. Let's square that up. Mailbox access has come up a lot up here, which I wholeheartedly understand. I've actually started to talk with the post office and your mail carriers about, what do we have to do that? And so really I appreciate Pete had reached out earlier about that from the Mid Trail or Poplar Lake group, sorry. And so thank you, Pete. But work in progress.
Yeah.
I think I covered that. Charging stations have come up quite a bit in our conversations with the DNR and the Forest Service about let's put some at strategic locations, strategic pull-offs, and maybe even work with some businesses and see if that's something that we can work on. And so now we're going to get into kind of the meat. You can see, I think what's really cool with this slide, not only can you see the whole trail, and you can identify some things that have been done, recent memory. So I'll say, and what I mean recent is since I've been here and a little prior to that. But you can see the yellow and the green highlighted spots is, what has been done and what will be done in the very, very short term. It's just identified projects that are coming up or that have been done. A couple of culvert replacements we did a couple of years ago towards the end of the trail there. We did a reclaim Trout Lake to Pine Mountain Road, a resurfacing. And then, in 2024, we're talking about doing a project, Mill to Hill project, as you head up the trail from town, that segment. But everything in red that you see on there on a high level is what we're trying to do through this grant. I mean, that's a lot, just visually looking at it. That's half the trail is getting touched in some capacity via this opportunity and via your input. So I genuinely appreciate the input and, hopefully this goes forward. That's enough of me talking though. CJ's a way better orator than I am, so I will turn it over to him and he's going to kind of go over the rest of everything here. So
yeah,
have at it.
I don't know about that, but thank you. It's happy to be here. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the project. Everything that Robbie's been talking about really focuses on the road centric or the road specific types of improvements. There are other types of improvements that can be identified and with this grant potentially do some or many of these projects. And so we've been working through that process and with Mitch trying to get a better handle on all of the other opportunities we have, as well as getting feedback from the public meetings, Forest Service, DNR, the scenic drive, and also referencing their plan to start to pull something together to get feedback on. So we're not here to propose and say, this is everything you should do. This is a culmination of all the information that we've been working through. So it's a process. And tonight's kind of a big night to get feedback on all the different things that we'll show you. And I'll kind of sit down and stand up just because I need to zoom in and out of this a little bit. But there are a couple other corridor wide initiatives that could be included in the grant proposal. The first is natural resource based. And so there's an opportunity corridor wide to first do a study and get a handle on invasive locations, get a handle, work with the Forest Service to understand better forest management and how the forest meets the road, and really sort of dissect the road from a natural resource standpoint to understand what the opportunities are. And what that study does is it starts to identify goals on, what needs help. The road is a vector for invasive plants. And so everybody knows that. And so there's an opportunity to do, a pretty wide ranging, I'd say really rare opportunity to hit a corridor like this and approach it from that perspective. And there's funding available for that type of work. So the study really identifies the goals and develops a plan on what you want to do, and maybe targeting certain types of invasives and maybe looking at establishing new types of habitat. But it sets the groundwork and the framework from which what the work could do. And then behind that, the work comes in and goes through phases of removals of invasives as well as plantings. So there's both a invasive treatment as well as a restoration component that could happen through this project. And that in and of itself is an incredible opportunity. There's an opportunity to not just focus on this from an ecological standpoint, but as well as a trail experience standpoint. There are places where the trail character is better than others, and there's some really unique environments, and there's opportunities to establish plant communities and forest types that can enhance that experience as well, and really lay the groundwork for a long time to come. And so through tree plantings and other types of seeding operations and things, there's a lot that could happen along the edges and sort of within and sort of over the right of way of the road. And so that's one thing corridor wide. Another is interpretation. And so it's part of the goals of really any scenic drive is to celebrate the intrinsic qualities of the scenic byways. And so interpretation could happen corridor wide. There are things that are ongoing for interpreting those qualities that the Forest Service is working on. A lot of tangents and sort of amenity improvements that have been identified are just enhancing trailheads. And so when you do that, opportunities for putting in new interpretive signage is there. So these are just kind of little things that help tell and preserve the stories of the Gunflint Trail and could be located at those spots. The last thing is recreational amenities. So the Gunflint Trail is the connector to a whole slew of different types of trails, from ATV and snowmobile, hiking trails, water trail, obviously. And so those offshoots and tangents of the Gunflint Trail are all opportunities. And so what was identified to us was looking at different trailheads, maybe establishing some new ones in the right spots. And so that can occur also corridor wide. And so it's a unique opportunity in that we're able to kind of touch a lot of different things that I would say the positive things the trail represents. And it really is kind of a rare thing to do. And so it's a cool opportunity. I forgot to mention also kind of trail wide, some things that have come up with, in particular, the trailheads is just looking at establishing stormwater treatment and really focusing on those places that are close to water access points, and can we do a better job or enhancement that starts to take runoff and do something with it. So the other thing here that this map is showing is that we broke the entire trail down into 4 segments just because it's so hard to see. All the boards that you've seen so far are located right here. And so there's the first, we're on the second one. Those are the 4 segments, but I can zoom in and out with the computers. That gives a better look at the segments. And so the segments and the purpose of them is really to just look a little closer at the recreational amenities that we talked about and how it layers over with some interpretation and stormwater things. And so I'll just go through these. This doesn't have to be a presentation, so if folks want to interject, please do. And I think I'll actually just pause right now and ask if there are any questions on what we've discussed so far.
I think the camera was cutting off CJ's head.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you want to, if you interject with the question, if you wouldn't mind just saying, hi, your name, what's your relationship to the Gunflint? You know, whether you live on it, you got property on it, being here, whatever it is, just a little, hey, how are you? We'd appreciate it.
This is Pete Round, and several years ago, we were working on trying to improve the limiting of aquatic invasive species. And I don't know if that's being considered, but one of the things a number of us lobbied for was some sort of an inspection station at the bottom of the Gunflint Trail that would basically provide some protection for all the lakes that are accessed from the Gunflint Trail. And that never went anywhere, but this might be an opportunity. There's funding available to get discussion of that started again.
I think that sounds great. I know, I've seen it through Soil and Water, and then even Tia Parks at the Highway Department, our environmental specialist. I think that has been working in conjunction again with Soil and Water, on some of the aquatic stuff. And I think the car wash in town, if I remember right, has something. I see it. I know there's some COLA members here, or Coalition of Lake folks, and they're nodding their heads. So I'm not talking too crazy right now. So I think there is things, but I think it's a good point, Pete.
Rockwood has one.
Oh, okay. Nice, cool. But it's still something to look at and see if there's, can we potentially do something better? Thanks, Pete.
So at segment one, we start in Grand Marais, and then we'll move our way north and the trail. Couple things here, and these are really sort of food for thought and follow-up comments. In the past, there has been some work done at the original Gunflint Trail sign that's been restored, or it's, I think, being worked on now, if I understood it correctly. It's a beautiful little site, and the potential to do some enhancements to the site itself. Looking at things like, how is the stone masonry doing? Does it need to be tuck pointed? Are there other things that can be done to simply enhance how that space works? And so there might be some unique things that could be done there to help celebrate that. It's not kind of technically at the start anymore, and so, but it does represent the beginning of it, kind of the experience of the Gunflint, and certainly holds a place within the community, sort of right in the heart of town. So it'd be great to entertain ideas on what that could be. We also identified just some opportunities for gateway enhancements, looking at establishing some more tree plantings. So when you actually do get on the beginning of the Gunflint Trail, some of the great character that you get, a few miles down the road is being kind of brought up closer to 61. At the last meeting we were at, the idea of introducing mileposts came up. And could that be something that we look at? And so we have identified mileposts, which is the red dot. This is mile 1. And the idea is that you would see these as you move along. It becomes an experiential thing that could kind of add to the experience. We put together some ideas on what that could look like. We propose them every 5 miles. I'm not sure if that's the right interval or not. It feels like it's the thing. I think we didn't want to do is every mile there being a sign. So we have about 60 miles to cover. Does 5 make sense? Does 10 make better sense? And so those are things we can get some feedback, but the plans give the idea of what that interval would look like at 5 miles intervals, what that could feel like. The Gunflint Trail painting on the water tower. It looks to be in good condition. This work is, 7+ years out. And so it's simply identifying that it might need to be repainted by then. Let's look for opportunities that kind of secure in a project this size will be, not a lot of money in the bucket to do things like that. And so these are things that become difficult to fund sometimes through normal methods. And so there's opportunities to think about things like that. At Pincushion, this information came, let me get this out of the way, from the Forest Service that some enhancements could happen there. Expanded picnic area, new vault toilet, trail expansion, open air shelter, new kiosk and interpretive signs. And so I think the Forest Service directives there were new picnic area, expanded picnic area, a new vault toilet. The range of the project allows us to think about other ideas, and so we've identified potentially some other things that could help what's going on there already. Go to the next slide.
When you say trail expansion, are you thinking about the bike trail also? Because I'm interested in that bike trail.
Yeah, I mean, part of this grant is about creating kind of multimodal connections. And so it was presented as an idea for feedback. We're not sure if it's really needed. We didn't get any specific feedback on that one. And so most of this is direct feedback that we got from people that have attended meetings or have submitted info to Robbie. We see that kind of if there's a package of recreational amenity improvements that could happen at various locations along the trail, it's trailhead enhancements, potential for trail, vault toilet, interpretive signage, and information kiosk, that type of improvement. So we just wanted to make sure where people were saying, well, you could do, this trailhead needs some improvement. Let's look at kind of the range of possibilities that could occur there. So that's how we had arrived at those ideas. There we go. So, sorry for the delay there. This is segment 2. Bottom here. Oh yeah, here we go. So, kind of as you leave Grand Marais at Golf Course Road, there's an existing parking ride or space that's being used as a parking ride. This is the only pull-off trailhead location that was proposed to potentially be paved. Just because of its use and kind of what the county sees there, it might make some sense to do that. The other thing that could be added there is a small basin for stormwater treatment, as well as an electrical vehicle charging station. So for folks arriving or traveling up the road, it's a kind of closer to the starting point where you'd have that opportunity. George Washington Pines Trailhead, and improvements there, information kiosk, a new vault toilet, stormwater treatment, and potentially EV charging stations. They're kind of close, but there is a northbound, southbound kind of component to this. And I think as we move along, a lot of this is identifying where the right spots are. So it is a work in progress. Again, the milepost markers you'll see pop up. The Northern Light Lake Trailhead parking lot extension. It's a difficult one for RVs, so having some more space for that accessibility had been identified. Stormwater treatment, kiosk, and overlook site feeding.
What exactly do you mean by stormwater treatment? What actually happens?
So at these parking areas where it's a paving, it's gravel, essentially to have a basin that's graded out that catches the water. And the main purpose of it would be simply to pull out the suspended solids out of the water. And so they fill up and filter out before they go on kind of their natural drainage path.
Retention.
What's that?
Retention. Just
Yep.
a little bit.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's exactly the type or style, whether it's full filtration or it's more retention or whatever it might be, is kind of what gets engineered eventually. But we looked at a few of these sites. I'll show you in a little bit, are kind of prototypical type developments to give you a better idea on what it looks like. But it's sort of a naturalized basin, if that makes sense.
Essentially, it's a ditch.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Stormwater treatment sounds better.
Yeah.
Trying to get a lot of money. Stormwater treatment.
The South Fork of the Brule trailhead, DNR trailhead. There's ATV and snowmobile access trail that happens here. Their comments were that including some stormwater treatment, new picnic area, the vehicle charging station. The thought was that that site could use a short hiking trail. So if you're there and your car is charging, you can actually get out and do a hike. We have a blow up of that. I'll show you in just a little bit. Kiosk and interpretive signage could all occur at that location. A new trailhead that had not been identified but is noted in the scenic drive plan is the Brule River Trailhead pull-off. That's a little more informal at where the road crosses the river, where there's kind of worn path and people access the river at that point. So that could become a unique opportunity to do an enhancement there again.
That's the north.
Yep. Correct. Yep. I don't know. It looks like the flowage here sort of bellies out, so it's actually holding water. And I don't know to what degree how the ease of paddling that stretch of river is. I was curious if anybody had any information on it. It is a 6.5 mile stretch to get down to the lower trailhead.
I was on it a little bit farther up, and it's really tough navigating. There's a lot of boulders.
Yeah.
Need to run it in the spring.
Probably wouldn't have to paddle too much.
Sorry. There we go. So that's jumping into section 3. So I'll finish off section 2 here. Not sure which one what more we have here. Once we get past the those brutal pull-offs, good grief. The next, there's the moose viewing trailhead. So again, interpretive opportunities, kiosks, vault toilet were the main things, potentially a couple picnic tables. There's the Swamper Lake Wayside pull-off as well. Improved parking, so some additional space, information kiosk, stormwater. And so I think the thing you'll keep hearing is repeating is there's kind of a template for basic enhancements to the trailheads.
Where does the start of the paving to the Clearwater Road, where does that start?
I always get them mixed up. Try, which one's further up, Trout Lake or Pine Mountain? Pine Mountain to Clearwater. Because we did Trout Lake, Pine Mountain.
Sorry, thank you.
I think there's people waiting.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Thank you for the heads
Thanks,
up.
Nathan.
So we just left up at Swamper Lake. We're kind of into section 3, which gets us through mid trail. A few comments and discussions that were happening at the last meeting was maybe we need a couple more pull-offs. The idea was that slower traffic may have the opportunity then to get off the road to allow traffic to move by with more ease. And so when you look at kind of in totality, all of the existing trailheads, some new trailheads, and in this case, there's just a simple pull-off planned, largely because of the distance between opportunities to get off the road that are not driveways or other roads. That one was located there. It's also kind of above the crest on a straight section of road, so it's a safer location to do that. As you move in then through mid trail, the next trailhead was the South Lake Trailhead. This is kind of a unique one, and we have some blow-ups here. The trailhead as it exists, there's a sign right off the road, as I'm sure you all know. It is all private property. And so that trail meanders through that property until it reaches public land. So there is not a good opportunity, and the request here was it really could use some parking to get at the trail. What the opportunity really is to look here, where you can see this is all private, this is public federal land that is right on the snowmobile trail and Forest Service Road that's there already. And so that allows us to get in a trailhead and have a blow up for that one. We'll show you in just a little bit.
BJ,
A new trail connection over. Yep,
are you in segment 3 now?
correct.
Okay,
And so that's a unique opportunity. There just really isn't the space to create a trailhead right at that existing point right now. Our feeling is it would be great for both of them to exist. There's obviously people that are here that use that trail now. I don't think there's a reason to get rid of it. So it's how do we do a small enhancement, gravel parking area and new trail over to meet up with it. The Laurentian Divide pull off. It's a great spot. Beautiful view. And one of the things we looked at with the original Gunflint trail sign is there's an opportunity to look at the materiality of that with the stone masonry. And we identified 2 other locations, which could be this one spot at the Laurentian Divide pull off, where you might find a simple wall, more of a traditional overlook that you see on the Highway 61 and other places, and bring some of that craftsmanship and amenity to this location. And then the other one is at the end of the trail. And so there may be 3 places where you can repeat that type of design expression and create some sort of rhythm or pattern or commonality through the byway. And so beyond that, these need to be further investigated, but there is a trail that navigates down the steep slopes. We have some photos of the stairs that are there. Opportunities to replace the stairs, do some trail work, could also occur at that point. To just do some simple trail improvements. The Mayhew Lake Historic Site, there's a small pull off there right off the road. Came out of the scenic drive plan. And so we identified that as just pull off improvements in an information kiosk.
Always flooding.
Yeah, the wetlands right there next to it. Little Iron Lake, public water access, again, kind of our run of trailhead improvements. We need to confirm, but we're kind of right in the range, I believe, of where the potential for the EV supercharger, the fast chargers would not be available anymore because of the type of electric service.
I was told it makes it all the way up to Loon.
Okay, so we're pretty close to the end, which is great.
We'd reached out to Arrowhead and they had told us the 3-phase stops at the Iron Lake campground. Is what I had heard. So that's why we were like, we're not sure how much more, pardon? Okay, yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. And that again goes for the fast chargers, to do that. It's not to say we couldn't still, at the end of the trail incorporate something, but you might have to spend the night or something.
A question about that, has Arrowhead been studied for those of us who live at the very end of the Gunflint Trail about the voltage drops or any relation to those of us at the very end as far as how it's going to affect? I'm assuming you're not running a whole new line to get all these voltage stations or charging stations up.
Oh, and that's a good question. It would be something we'd have to coordinate with them more to see. The question we just started with was, with this opportunity to incorporate charging stations is, can we even, and how far up can we go with it? And so I think the next step is if we identify some good spots to then make sure we're not going to affect anybody, towards the end of the trail there. Or anywhere, really.
On to segment 4, the last segment, that takes us all the way up to the end of the trail. This is a blow up of the end of the trail. There are some interesting thoughts that some folks had contributed last time that were part of the exploration. Zoom back down here. So we're at Loon Lake, Gunflint Lake, Magnetic Lake. So the Cross River pull off, just an extended pull out information kiosk. And then again, you'll keep seeing the stormwater pop up, but there's a unique opportunity there. And kind of a different type of pull off in that environment. The Kekakabik trailhead, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, it's kind of the trailhead suite of improvements. Same with the Magnetic Rock trailhead. And Leech Lake pull off and water access, I'm sorry, Large Creek, same type of trailhead improvements. And so as we get towards the end of the trail, it becomes kind of focused on a few different places. Seagull Lake, public water access, and which is this location right here. Zoom down a little bit. We have another existing public water access that could also bring together these opportunities. And so part of what the work wants to do is identify places where there's already things going on. And there's simple kind of gravel lot improvements or enhancements, and then the information kiosks, and looking at opportunities for stormwater. Some of these trailheads are pretty far removed from any water bodies, and there's a lot of potential to be dealing with the water just in the existing environment. These locations that are immediately adjacent to water bodies could be recipients, and it would make a lot of sense strategically to think about stormwater improvements there. End of the trail, I'd mentioned that as well. There's a unique fork in the road and sort of demarcates the end of the path. And so we had mentioned sort of a 3-part strategy where looking at the original Gunflint Trail sign as kind of the influencer of what you could do in 2 other spots, the Laurentian Divide overlook, and then again at the end of the trail, You know, to kind of demarcate your endpoint or kind of launching point into the boundary waters. Were all identified, and I will move over to here. So one thing that was identified in our discussions was that the end of the trail could really use a hiking trail. And it was thought about maybe it could be multimodal. We've really looked at it as just a hiking trail opportunity. From the best data we could gather and pull together, there's an existing trail, which is in orange right here. So this is the Seagull. Yep, nature trail. And then we've got the Saginaw Trail, public water access here, which could get some basic improvements as well. So we took a pass at this and just looked at where high ground was, where we could see wetlands, and there's potential to start thinking about a trail that could meander and move in and off the edge of Seagull Lake. There's opportunities, you know, we have water crossings that could occur here and here. And there's some really unique landscape, topography. And it adds up to, depending how you lay it out, you know, 6-7 miles of trail. The yellow dots represent areas that just look like they'd be great places to set up a little day camp if you wanted to go there and swim or just kind of hang out. And so the idea is that the trail could be dotted with just a few opportunities to sit and enjoy the lake environment. And it's all, you know, proximate to the campgrounds. We didn't include a lot here just because we know we have people staying in these locations. You know, the trail could be moving in and off of those spots, but trying to be thinking of the trail from an experiential standpoint, minimizing impacts, other things that are already happening, whether it's private property or other campsites. There's a kind of a cutback in the middle, so this could turn into a kind of a quicker hike if it wanted to be. I'm not sure exactly what's going on right here, but I can tell it's the narrowest space to get over the water. But identifying how you actually get across the water body into this area would be something that needs to happen. If it requires a small bridge or something, those are things that are all kind of trail aligned with trail work. So all of those could potentially be there.
And you need a bridge where the orange trail, right there,
Yeah.
The other one
or you could swim.
is a canyon.
Right here, this one.
That one is a canyon.
Yeah.
It's 30 feet to the water.
Maybe we don't want to go there then.
It's really pretty. I mean, it's really beautiful.
It-
Canoes can get under. Right, exactly.
Well, that's a portage there. Right where that section is, that's all.
May I make a comment, please?
Yes.
I'm John Barker, live on Hungry Jack. What we're really doing here that I see is we're creating a tourist mecca. And this is going to greatly, in my estimation, increase the traffic that we have in this area. So we are going to lose some of the character of the trail because of this is going to be a great place for tourists. So I think we have to keep that in the back of our mind as we move forward.
Any other comments at this point?
That lower crossing in the orange one at the end of the trail. That one's also a paddle through for boundary waters, entry points into Seagull. No, if it was a low bridge, you'd have to paddle under the bridge or portage.
Oh.
So that would be that's a pretty good current going through that.
Yeah.
I'm a resident that lives at the very, very end where you're talking, and I spoke earlier. I will tell you that there's an awful lot of moose habitat and eagle habitat where you're proposing all those walking trails. And I would hope that that would be taken into consideration as well, because again, I'm agreeing with John. If you're going to make it a mecca where there's a lot of people who are going to be attending and walking, you're going to be affecting those, particularly the moose and the baby moose that live at the end of the Gunflint.
No, that's a good point. That's why we appreciate it.
One other comment,
Al Fleeter. I've been enjoying Mid Trail for 42 years, and I just want to reinforce what John Boddicker said. We are creating, it sounds like, a tourist mecca. And maybe it's obvious to everybody else, but I'm going to say one of the things is that if people are going farther and farther up the trail, more people, the ones that will be affected most are at the first part of the trail. Just to be aware of that. And Robbie, you mentioned you're coming on the scene. When did you begin working at Cook County then?
August 2020.
2020, okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me or not?
Yes, we can.
Yes or no?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Barb Young at Boundary Country Trekking, Poplar Creek Guest House. I realize that right now we're up at Seagull. Can we go back to, let's see, my notes. South Lake Trailhead and the Greenwood Lake area in there. I used to be, I'm sorry that I did not attend the last meeting, and I'm afraid I'm not too up on this. But let's go back to the Greenwood Lake parking area where the snowmobiles park. Let's go back there, all the way back to the South Lake Trail, South Lake. Let's go back further, where the Greenwood Road is and the South Lake parking area.
You're talking South Brule.
South Brule.
I'm sorry, South
Okay.
Brule. I'm sorry. South Brule. Okay, let's do that. Where are we here? And okay, let's get a larger photograph of where the snowmobiles are parking at the South Brule. If we can. And I just Brule River Trailhead pull off. Okay. Improved river access. Okay, let's go there. As soon as we get there, let me know, and I want to talk about that. There's South Brule, and then this
We'll
right
probably
here.
not be able to zoom
I
in
s-
enough to see the
Okay,
parking
what
lot.
you see the yellow dots?
Yep.
I assume that's where the parking area is for the snowmobiles and
Right
the snow plows and stuff like that. A few years ago, when I was on the Scenic Byways Committee, do you see where that is? Okay,
Yeah.
see the yellow dots? Okay, a few of us had gone out to the South Brule River. And at that time, we had wanted to create two, I don't even know if the Scenic Byways, we gave up on this because the Forest Service told us they would need liability insurance and would blah, 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 blah. But we walked down to the South Brule from this parking area, and there are like these little waterfalls in here. And we always thought this would be a beautiful place. And of course, the bridge is right. There's a bridge right in here also. The bridge is where? Right here where the Gunflint Trail, right in here. So we walked down here, and this is an absolutely magnificent area to hike in. But we were sort of told from the Forest Service it'd be too expensive because of liability insurance, because it's U.S. Forest Service land. But my question is, I don't know how much of the grant you're looking at as far as building some hiking trails, if it's something that's possible, is it worthwhile? It's just that the Scenic Byways did do a study on it, or we walked in there. It was magnificent because of the Brule River having the waterfalls in here. You know, just these beautiful little areas. Now, when tourists travel the Gunflint Trail, they do not see many waterfalls right off the Gunflint. But this was a great place where people could park, walk in, and for a little while in here, they could hike in here and see some really nice water, just short waterfalls. Okay. So that was real. So I guess my question is, I'm sure that cost a fortune, and because of liability insurance, maybe it's just, but the Scenic Byways Committee did do a lot of work on this stuff. Another thing, let's go back to the South Lake trailhead, where you were talking about building a trailhead from near Mayhew Lake Road to the South Lake trailhead. Let's go up there another few miles to right above Poplar Lake. Let's go up there. I guess what I'm looking at is where people can pull off and see some, okay, here's Poplar, here's the South Lake. And then you were talking about, see this little thing in here, that little yellow, here it is down here. Okay, let's go down below Birch Lake. Okay, there's a Laurentian Divide pull-off, but before that, you see the South Lake trailhead right in there, right here. Again, as you know, when people go to the South Lake trailhead, they are parking right on the Gunflint Trail. They can go to Rockwood and park their cars in there, but there's a lot of horrendous traffic in here because the South Lake Trail goes right up here. It would be fantastic, and the Scenic Byways did go in here, but obviously this would cost a fortune. And I think there's private property in here, so I don't know. But to have a place for a parking area in here, so people would hike in here, then go to the South Lake. So all this congestion on the Gunflint Trail maybe wouldn't be there. It's just something I want to add. I'm going to be 80 years old on Valentine's Day. And before I pass away, I just want to just give my input a little bit on things that we've looked at forever and ever and ever. I'm into hiking trails and easier access trails and vehicle parking off the Gunflint Trail. But in park, so I'm talking about this South Rule, and I'm talking about the South Lake, is that would take tourists off the Gunflint Trail into parking areas. That is my input for tonight. And I'm sorry, this is my first time attending because it's the first chance I've had. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate these meetings. Thank you, guys and gals.
I really appreciate the input, and I'm happy, to hear that this is, it's, and we've talked about this a lot, of these small improvements that can be done along the trail that alone seemingly cost a lot of money, $10,000-$20,000 to try and come up with to do trail improvements. Yeah, exactly. But when we're talking of a grant of this magnitude, upwards of $25 million, yeah, what is right? It's a lot of money.
$5 million?
Up to. So we'll see what we can go after.
So we should put as much in there as we can.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So, it's a great opportunity to do all of this. So I appreciate the input. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, any other,
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
two questions. So how many trails along this whole core segment corridor are you talking about, wanting the spots where you want to add trails?
So this South Lake trailhead that we were talking about, we can park. So there's a connector. That's that yellow dash line we were just looking at. I think it's about a mile. At the South Fork of the Brule River, it's 1.5 miles of trail, and it's pretty much right in line with what we heard. And then at the end of the trail, that was about 6-7 miles. And so those three, and that's it.
So it's just.
Yeah.
For new ones. Is that what you're asking?
For new ones,
Yes, for new ones.
Okay.
and at Pincushion, we simply put out the idea are there trail enhancements that could happen there as well? So I guess that might be a fourth. but we don't have any real directive on that.
Yeah.
These ones I just mentioned came from our meetings, came from people in attendance, their past history. We're not, proposing them per se, we're just kind of regurgitating on plans to show everybody what other folks have said.
Mama bird feeding her baby bird.
So I completely understand that, is this the right fit? Does it make sense? Some of these are relatively simple and small trails. The one at the end of the trail is a bigger change. And so those need to be kind of vetted out.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the answer on those. When
The second question
Yep.
with reference to mailbox.
Yep.
Like such as Clearwater, there's like, I don't know, how many there mailboxes there?
60.
60? Has there been any conversation or suggestion or ask for the removal of those off of the main way in collaboration with what the local post office has in consideration and then taking it off the road?
Yeah, we've actually, and I think I might have touched on it at the beginning a little bit, just in one area. But I have been talking with the post office already about certain spots and moving them. And so if there is, that's something I don't think we need to wait to do. If we want to do that, my understanding, and I'm like 85% positive of this is that us at the highway department, we would have the authority to move them. Typically, what we've done that and how we've done that in the past has been, it hasn't been on a magnitude of 60 boxes or whatever it's, but landowners have typically been responsible for that, of moving them. We have the posts and that type of stuff. I think, with something like this, if there's a spot identified, Clearwater, we've talked about it at, thank you, Hungry Jack, and then even 85, the west end of 85 and the Gunflint, of having that conversation about moving them elsewhere so that you don't have to walk out onto the Gunflint to go get your mail. But it is something, like I said, relatively positive. We can do that. I've been working and talking with the mail carrier up here to just make sure, because I don't want to like do things and then all of a sudden, nobody knows about it. Now nobody has mail. Or whatever it is. I don't want to do that. I know it's hard enough sometimes getting mail. But yeah, so.
Thank you.
Welcome. I know Nancy and Callie had questions, but.
I just had a comment. It would be great if all those vault toilets went in. It's really needed. People are doing what they need to do, so do something that is a little less unsightly. And better for the environment, et cetera. So that's great. Who's gonna pump them,
Yep. And that was a piece to address that real quick. It was really interesting when we were talking with the Forest Service, that was there, like, yeah, we want that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we will do that.
Yeah.
And so it was they were very much on board with everything that we're talking here isn't like new things that we're like, let's do something weird, this is stuff that we've heard from people.
Yeah.
And so that was, directly kind of from the mama bird, if you will, on down to us. Do you have another? Sorry, I interrupted you. Was that?
That was it.
Okay. Callie, do you have a?
Yeah, my question was, what's the logistic, the feasibility or within the budget, have you run the numbers on how many pull-offs you can do within that $25 million? Like, is it gonna be like 1 or 2 pull-offs you can enhance or upgrade, or is it, can you do?
Plan is all of them.
Like, how many are?
All. Yes. Don't have hard numbers yet, but like we were talking about with some of these enhancements where it's $20,000 to do this, $40,000 to do this, which is big on its own when you're talking, local communities, lake associations, whatever, trying to fundraise or do whatever to go after this. But when we can say millions and millions and millions of dollars, 20 grand, nothing, 40, nothing. But what it does too for us is if we say we max out the grant, we need more money or something. Well, it gives us 6-7 years now to start looking through a lot of other funding sources. The GLRI is a great source, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative for invasives treatment, maybe even stuff like this, like we're talking about. There's other programs that exist for trail enhancements. I'm sure the feds or even the DNR have, better ideas when it comes to if we say, we want to do this specific thing, hello, fellow partners, what exists out there to go do it, we can pursue it then. Right.
Yeah, Carl from Rockwood, mid-trail, and we were just worried about the speed at mid-trail.
Yep,
So
yeah.
I think we were gonna address that later.
We are,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
getting there. Yes.
Uh,
Sorry, he had his hand up real quick.
Okay, so process, I'm keep Brianna from Gunflint, wait, so let's say that out of the 25 million, you only get 20.
Sure.
Will the process then be to prioritize these things and what can be done? Will that be basically it?
It'll be it. I mean, so how it works is I can ask up to 25. So if I think we need 28, well, we'll go after all of it. And then, you know, I can't remember, Mitch, if you remember reading it, they might have a thing in there sometimes, like if you don't get 25, how much could you get and still do it? And I think that's a piece of this, maybe, yes, okay. So it could be something like that, and then we can say, all right, we're 5 million short. Now let's start going after this other stuff, to try and backfill that. But the nice thing too is it gives us 6 years to really find that stuff. That's a lot of time. You know, you look at kind of the heads up we got to do this in 4 months to turn something like this around. You know, and at this point, we have project identified preliminarily in 6 years to really find all the funding if we need to. Good question.
Is there a expectation or an advantage in having some kind of local match?
Yes, that's a great question. It's not required, so what's really nice is because we are so rural, we can 100% fund the project with this grant. But there is part of the funding, and even in the scoring criteria, part of it is innovation. And what that is even innovative funding. So if we do utilize different grant opportunities, local funds, whatever it might be, that kind of goes towards that. It kind of helps us actually if we, you know, have different funding sources that are a part of this.
Do you know who's going to read the applications? Do they go to what level? State, federal?
It goes through the federal government.
Okay. So I would expect a match would be quite desirable.
Yes, and you know, what's nice is how you provide funding. So like, if we all of a sudden match 40%, that doesn't let us score any better. So like, if we put up more money, we don't score any better. If I put in $10 or $2 million, our score in theory would be the same. It's if we use different types of funding in there, then that could potentially increase our score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, partnership, but certainly whoever reads it is going to be more favorable if they see that we have some skin in the game.
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
One more and then we'll cruise along. Yes.
Hey, Oliver, Liz Bearskin.
Yes.
Has any thought been put into the kind of the loop of the Lima grade and the, as a place for people to get off the road and, because there are a lot of beautiful trails back there.
Mhm.
Portages, there's a Lima Mountain
Mhm.
Trail.
We,
Quite nice.
yes, and I wasn't sure, you know, with this, I'm sure, you know, like some of the things we're showing are, you know, just off of the Gunflint a little bit. One of the stipulations that was in there is if you're doing a corridor project, it really needs to kind of stick to the corridor, because there were some things so there's, you know, parts of this when I was initially thinking this was like, let's look at all of these roads. Let's look at Clearwater and Hungry Jack and, you know, well, and just like, what can we do? Can we just get new gravel out there? Can we get some ditches? Can we, you know, but it was really kind of this very centric, if you're going to do a corridor, stick to the corridor. And so we
That's
didn't,
another project,
yes,
in other words.
yes, another cool presentation and a later date.
Okay.
Thank you.
so I'm just gonna keep moving along here because I want to make sure we have time for the mid-trail stuff too, but this just brings a little clarity to when we're talking about the trailheads, what we're really talking about. This is the Laurentian Divide pull-off. It's essentially the same exact footprint that's there right now. That's gravel. It's expanded just on this side 20 feet so that cars could park off to the edge. It could still be parked informally, kind of how folks do. A few boulders basically delineate an edge, And then we talked about, in this case, being sort of the midpoint, where we could look at a treatment and similar to the original Gunflint entrance sign. And so it's just a stone wall, 18 inches high in the middle, 24 inches high on the edge. And it just creates a little bit of projection. So it gets you a few feet off the ground, enhances the view a little bit, but it gives you a place to sit. And so essentially it's the same gravel. There's a little bit more. This is an existing trail. And so with this kind of funding, redoing the steps that are there now, looking at water bars or other places on that trail that might have some erosion or water issues are just really easy things to do. And so up at top, then we showed two little panels here, which could be interpretive panels. This is a vault toilet and just kind of tucked to the edge. We tried to put them in places where, just the face, which is kind of the better looking face of the vault toilet, is showing, and there could be an information kiosk. And so I know there's a lot of them, but the proposal is really just to enhance the ones that are there, potentially with the vault toilet. And to the discussion we've been having, we don't know right now that everyone can have a vault toilet. Someone's got to maintain them. So part of our discussion with the Forest Service was responding to the ones that they know they want vault toilets at, and it's usually user-based, where there's things going on that they want that cause more maintenance than is needed. But we're also looking at these other opportunities based on some of the scenic drive reports, priorities, the unique locations that they have in their report, to think about these same things. And so that's part of the work moving forward. But just to give you an idea, this is the most extreme one of all the existing trailheads. That this one has this wall that's included. The rest are really just delivering a vault toilet kiosk and some interpretive signs. We're not proposing paving any of them. This one has a little bit of expansion on it as well. We had mentioned that South Lake Trail. And so the actual trail head is further, down eastbound on the Gunflint. There's no space there to do a place to park. So we had to find where the public land is. This is a Forest Service road / snowmobile trail that runs off in that direction. The corridor is already there, essentially the dirt road's there. So we have a small location here where we can get it to drain centrally, get into the ditch, so to speak. There's parking for 6 cars here, and a kiosk and a vault toilet. And so just be some gravel expansion. So this is one we have kind of identified new trailheads at the South Lake Trail, a new pull off kind of as you're approaching a mid trail. And then this is another enhanced existing trail. And so this is the South Fork of the Brule River. This is the existing footprint essentially of the gravel that's there. We have done this before in other locations where we can bring in boulders just to define and demarcate where the trailers actually park. So it just becomes a more efficient way of telling folks that are trailering and ATVs and snowmobiles how to park. This is this is the flat area on the site where we could potentially move water to, so that we can do some pre-treatment before it makes its way down the hill towards the river. It was also identified in the last meeting that this could be a place for some trails, and wasn't described to us at all where the trail should exactly be. We just took a look at it and said, you'd be able to access down this environment in this kind of nice point, but maybe there is a crossing that could occur here. It could be a simple footbridge. My wife's family's at a place on the Brule River in Wisconsin for over 100 years, and Wisconsin DNR created these little cable suspension bridges that have nothing but 2x4s attached to them, and they're kind of precarious when you get on them, but I've never heard of anyone falling in the river. But they're very
about that, and I was like, no way, but all right. Someone will do it.
And they can be done where they're compliant, with kind of accessibility and things. Yeah. You know, and so there may be very simple ways that we could do this. We've looked at them in Minnesota as well. It's really about the railings and preventing people, and you can use things like essentially a tennis netting on the sides that meets all of your railing requirements. And so in this case, this is a 1.5 trail. It moves down and up through the high point, all kind of nice high ground. There's some low draws that cut through here, gets you back on the Brule through what looks like to be some fast water. And by the time you get back, your vehicle is charged if you're charging it. So that was the metric on how long to make the trail. It takes about a half an hour, 40 minutes to hike it. So this is an existing trail that could have a short hiking loop. And then we have one other. I'm sorry, I went through those already. Yep.
You know, it looks like a cool parking lot there, but you know, a lot of times in the winter, there's trailers behind cars.
Yep.
Looks like you can park 4 of them there,
Yep.
and there's usually like 14 in there.
Yes.
That wouldn't work also.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those trailers are parking in on these edges, which could still continue.
You can still do that. Do
Yeah.
you have it there?
Absolutely. The footprint is what's there now.
Right, I mean, you got some.
If it needs to be sized for 14 trailers, that could certainly be accommodated.
Yeah, and we can, like we were saying, I think the point is conceptually, right? Here's kind of an idea. You know, and it's something that we can dial in on a lot more. You know, I was just there the other week, and to your point, it was busy, even early in the morning. And what I noticed though was everyone parked very happy, you know, haphazardly, kind of all over the place, which made it a little confusing. I hadn't been there yet, and so I was like, I'm not sure where I should park my truck and trailer. So if there is a way to make it more clear, you know, everyone should park diagonal or something like that. You know, and only park on this edge, or, you know, I don't know, but I think conceptually, you know, idea number one. Stacy, it looked like you had a question too, or was that
I
it?
was just gonna say, how do your plow drivers like the rock idea?
They'll love it.
Yeah.
I think it's as long as, you know, to that point, no, it is thinking about it, as long as it's something, you know, it's for us to think about when we work through this. And I think, you know, if we get to that point, if we can get to that point of here's our project, now let's dial down on it and just make it so it's visible when it snows, that we don't have to worry about backing into a boulder. You know, and making it very, very clear where things are. It's a good point. I'll convince them.
You got a couple of people trying to get them.
There more.
Carrie, sorry.
The question about all the EV charging stations that
Yeah.
are projected at the parking area, have there any of them being discussed at like the lodges or the trailheads?
That can be part of it. It's a conversation to have. I know I've talked with,
You can eat and while you're
Mhm.
charging, as opposed to just hiking and peeing and golf.
well, you'd be up there with your food cart, sell hot
Yeah,
dogs, yeah.
Exactly.
Fresh trout.
Just curious.
Yeah.
things.
It was, you know, I kind of put it out. I've talked about it very informally too with, you know, I think it's something where we could partner with businesses. You know, I know like we've talked, you know, Rockwood's, you guys have
Yeah.
one? Yeah,
Oh, great.
what's that?
We have one.
Yeah. And so, you know, if there is other opportunities for that at the other lodges, I'm very, very open to that. I think it's a great opportunity to bring that up here. You know, I know, you know, and you've heard it from folks, you know, I've heard it a lot from folks with electric cars of, well, and you look on the map, 1, 2 up here.
They're just gonna have.
Yeah, so
Yeah, because to plug in and hike for 1.5 miles isn't gonna give you a lot of.
no, but those fast ones go, I think that was the idea, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we had talked about this half hour.
480.
Yeah, so as long as we got the good, you know, if we're south of that Iron Lake campground area, we can put in the fast ones in half hour or so and you're good to go. Yeah,
One comment with that, first of all, would any of those be visible from the road?
I think the intent right now and seeing them tucked away is no.
No.
And we had talked about that too in other meetings of not having them necessarily at like pull offs, but like more. Yeah,
And the second part of that is just my concern. I'm kind of piggybacking with John Bodker, the gentleman in the Gunflint,
sure.
regarding having hikes or something for people to do while they're waiting for cars to charge.
Sure.
To be very cognizant of the fact of the wildlife in the area
Mhm.
and that some of the areas maybe should not be disturbed
Sure.
because of what is there.
Mhm.
And that
needs to be the priority, in my opinion, over people getting bored, getting their cars charged.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. And even to the point, thinking about it with the end of the trail and moose habitat and eagle habitat. Maybe we don't do anything then, because that is such, I mean, that's pretty pristine up there. And looking at it, again, concepts. But that's why we do this, appreciate the input to then help us say, all right, maybe we don't have that, maybe it's a shorter loop or something or whatever.
And again, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself to Zoom. I'm Mona Hanson. I live on Leo Lake.
Thanks, Mona. Thank you.
So just thinking, if Chippewa doesn't have any charging stations, maybe something developed by Chippewa and then people could go to the museum.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, I know up there it would have to be the longer ones, we'll give them some cots or something up there. I think that would be, but no, it's a good point. You think it would be, is that okay, Dave? Yeah, but no, I think it's a great point to have that. And same thing, with Siegel. And then, some of the other amenities towards the end is, there's no reason we can't have them. They're just not gonna be those fast ones because we just can't. It's not the problem. Anyway, sorry, CJ, I keep cutting off the presentation.
Robbie,
Yes,
Robbie, can you hear me?
I can.
My name's Larry Wooding. I'm on the mid-trail area.
Okay.
And it seems that we're going to create many places for people to spend time. And
Potentially, yes.
And while people are waiting for cars to charge or moose to cross, or their picnic lunch to be digested, et cetera, and while they're using all these wonderful outhouses we're putting, where are they going to put their trash?
And that could be part of the discussion too, is making sure that there's proper receptacles at these places. And identify which ones.
I think that would be wise to have. If you look at the pull-off by Swamper Lake.
Yep.
There's a sign that says latrine, but there's no latrine. There's more toilet paper, Kleenex,
Yep.
soda cups, beer can, there's a lot of trash that needs to be considered. And if people are there, they're going to empty their car.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like you to
That's a good
consider
point.
that, please.
Well, that's really good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yep.
All right, you can continue on.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
won't spend a lot of time with these, but one of the things that is an opportunity is when you do vault, we've done one like this before. It's a precast concrete vault toilet. Crest was the brand that we worked with, and they supply, I think, most or all of the state, DNR vault toilets. They have kind of their standard style, the DNR does. It's a painted concrete. We did one where we just created some recesses, and it was actually a cedar siding that was attached on furring strips. You can keep it relatively protected. We thought maybe there's an idea you could do something with cordwood. These little wings that come off could actually be cordwood walls, go all the way through. The idea is that in the purpose of these illustratives are not to say this is the design, we're not proposing this gets built. The thing where there's an opportunity is to create some commonality along the Gunflint Trail or unique qualities that might be different at every trailhead. They become ways to just enhance the look and feel of places. And maybe make them a little bit better to experience. We had another kiosk, and so it's a timber structure that you could do something unique with and create some kind of unique architecture to that. There's a lot of incredible craftsmen, people that live and work around this place, and so there's opportunities here to think about what things should look and feel like, and does that become kind of an expression of the community that is on the Gunflint. And so we just explored some ideas where some unique things could be built, might be some opportunities for things like that. And then the last one we had was just a little interpretive sign where you can start to do some kind of nice things and how it meets the ground, and just very simple, subtle things. That's kind of the package of improvements for the trailheads. There's a little bit of expansion on a few of them to allow some cars to park. Ones that were identified by the Forest Service as being a little too tight for circulation. And again, most of these are all existing. And so these are the types of things that you'd find once you get into them. There's a question about, would you be able to see this stuff if we were working through the project? I'd say, no, we don't want to change any of that. It's really trying to maintain what's there and do subtle improvements through these types of amenities within the spaces that are there already. And so there's just kind of a handful of different ideas. The idea of a milepost was introduced, and we were looking at ways to just very simply, subtly do that off the edge of the road. We heard a lot of comments about we need to consolidate signs. We don't want all the noise of signs. And so how you might do that someplace where it doesn't have to become something that's loud and still gives that demarcation, which is kind of a unique experience as well, just to be able to kind of track your movement. And so that was explored as well. And so as far as developing some detail and kind of texture materials, those are the exhibits and the types of things that you would see at the trailheads. And so I'm going to move into the mid-trail study. We've got about a half an hour left in time. And so I would just kind of introduce this with some comments about what we heard at our last meeting. And so what we heard was some folks saying we really need to improve safety by getting a wider shoulder so that people can move and bike along the road through mid-trail. We had other people say they didn't want to see any of that. And so there's some definite discussion that happened around that issue. And we took a look at how could you do these things? What are the impacts? And so it's really just to express ways of thinking about shoulder widening. Some of the things that we heard that I felt like were positive feedback was that, the road's narrow and we like it that way. That's what makes it feel cool. That's the good experience. And it's directly related to the horizontal and vertical curvature of the road, how you move up and down and side to side, limited view in front of you. It's a tight, very enclosed environment. The wildlife limiting signs, a traditional aesthetic. I've framed it. I couldn't quite describe it, but it was, I think, just a reluctance to do anything that really changes the way the road looks and feels. And so those are positives and things that should be sought and thought about with any changes. This high level of enclosure and the edge of the forest being right up to the side of the road is something that shouldn't change. Vistas and views of water. Some of the negative things that were expressed, like too many signs, we could do better in eliminating more. Don't do anything suburban that looks and feels suburban.
No mode drive.
Yeah, and so the vehicle speed was certainly talked about. Backups behind slow vehicles is a problem. That kind of led to this pull-off idea, or maybe some more. We've suggested one pull-off kind of as you're getting closer to mid-trail. Forest cutting in certain areas where there's that lack of enclosure. There's some interesting dialogue from some people in the digital meeting that have been here for a long time, I think born and raised, if I understood it correctly, and just them talking about the changes over time and kind of losing some of that enclosure and sort of driving literally through the woods. Changes that alter the flow and the role of the road would be negative, so it's got to be maintained the way it is. And limited visibility, which kind of gets us to some of the mailbox things and just other kind of places where people are congregating could be dangerous. So that framed a way for us to look at mid-trail. And if we're going to take a shot at where, could shoulders be widened? And it's really a largely response to a number of folks wanting to see that. How could you do it? And so we approached change under that lens. And so just a couple orientating things about this stretch of mid-trail is between the yellow dots, the trail was widened to a 4-foot paved shoulder and a 1-foot aggregate shoulder. The plans were done in 2005. I assume it was 2006, or right in that area that there's a little more pavement. I'll call it the north side of the road. The areas outside of the yellow dots is the typical road section, which is 2 11-foot lanes and 2-foot gravel shoulders. And so that's kind of what we're working with. It is a little bit wider between the yellow dots already. What has been talked about is having it, if there's widening to occur, that it could occur from this location here up to 92. And so there's some additional length that would provide more opportunities for people to move along the road. So what we began to look at was like, well, how do we do that? And if it were to happen, and we're not suggesting that it has to, but if it did happen, how do we do it in a way where we don't have to cut down the forest? Like, how do we just preserve everything? And is it even possible? So the first thing we looked at was the character of this stretch of road. It changes dramatically as you move through mid-trail. There's sections where there's 80-foot red pines smack dab on either side of the road. And there's other places, and they almost always align with power and communication lines, where on the north side of the road, there's already clearing. And so that enclosure and kind of the quality of the forest, you could make an argument, isn't as high as the other locations. So if you're going to do a trail, let's look for the low-hanging fruit. We know we have those areas on the north side of the road. We mapped it out everywhere in yellow. We would call kind of a constrained or more high enclosure, high value stretches of mid-trail. And those are the locations where the power lines run off of the road. There's one located, I'll zoom in just a little bit on this. So just past Trail Center, the power line leaves the road and makes its way back. At this location, the Northwoods Loop, the poles and the lines leave the road. And then again at just before you get to 92. And so those are the places where you tend to see the really tight enclosure and kind of that high value experience of on the road. The rest of it is a mix of areas where there's exposed bedrock and there's kind of a natural pushback of woods. The power line jumps up and down off of that. Other areas where there's just that kind of clearing for the lines, and then businesses where we have driveways and parking areas right off the road. And so all of those things kind of come together. But what it said to us is that, really the north side or the south side of the road is the area where we have the tightest environment at the edge of the road. And so then the next thing we looked at was if you're going to think about this, how do you do it? And so the existing conditions, I described two of them are right here on the left. And so this is sort of outside the core of mid-trail. And so it's 11-foot lanes and then two-foot gravel shoulders. That's 26 feet of width. And then through the heart of mid-trail, I'll call it, there's 2 11-foot shoulders. That same 2-foot shoulder on the south side, and on the north side, it's 4 feet of bituminous and a foot of aggregate. So it's a 5-foot shoulder essentially. So what we did is we took a look at the design guidelines, and in particular, the rural design guidelines for facilities along roads, and also just looked at this from a shoulder widening standpoint. And so this is really working the minimums of what you could do, and actually increasing the feel of safety for people that are walking and biking the road. And so we have kind of a mix of things. The first thing that we did is we identified 10-foot lanes, so each lane loses a foot. Narrowing lanes slows traffic. So it's a speed mitigation as well, so it overlaid nicely with that. It gives us another 2 feet to play with. And once we do that, this strategy is, do nothing about widening adjacent to this southbound lane, I'll call it. On the northbound lane, we're showing an 8-foot shoulder with the 1-foot gravel shoulder next to it. And so what that results in is an overall increase in width of 2 feet in this condition, and an overall increase in width of 5 feet where we have this condition. In the areas that when we talked about this, where there's really high enclosure and the larger trees are moving closer to the road, it's feasible that you could make this a 6-foot shoulder and still get by with it. So this 8-foot shoulder, when we're talking about 2 feet, you can't answer definitively at this point that there's zero impacts to trees, and forest, but it's extremely limited. Those areas that it's really tighter, if we go to a 6-foot shoulder, we're the exact same dimension as this road. There's no widening to it. So that's a way to think about shoulders and just preserving the character and the experience of the road with a different type of shoulder and lane configuration. The other option that we looked at, I'll keep moving this around for people in the room here, was having shoulders on both sides of the road. And going to a 5-foot shoulder from the 4-foot shoulder, it really is not giving you any real benefit. It's below standards. And accompanied with a 10-foot lane now, we really haven't done anything to improve the 4-foot shoulder that's there right now. So it really, the minimum proposal there, if it wants to function about improving some safety on both sides, is a 6-foot paved shoulder with the 1-foot aggregate, and the 6 and 1 on the other side with 2 10-foot lanes, drive lanes. And so that results in a 5 feet of widening from this condition where the shoulder exists. And then at the edges of the mid trail where that could happen, it's a total widening of 8 feet. And so that inherently would come with, some additional impacts because we are moving it further out. It's more difficult to adjust this scenario because we're really working a minimum width on the shoulders. These are not designated bikeways or bike facilities. These are simply widened shoulders that will have ancillary uses that allow people to potentially move on them, feel safer and have a little more separation from traffic. The next thing we wanted to do is just try and depict best we could what that looks like. Okay. So we're here at Trail Center. That's our first section study that we took. You'll notice this is the image, from the street view, really tight growth right on the edge of the road. On this side, we have more of a corridor space. The lines represent potentially that widening and how that feels if it were to be focused entirely on the north side. This is the existing 4 feet of pavement that's there. And so we're talking about a 2-foot, this represents, getting out that 2 to 5 feet of width to the edge. And so it gives you a visual just on what that looks and feels like. These areas are paved. It is a shoulder, and recognize cars park in these areas. And sorry for the jumping around here, but and then on this side, the pavement edge stays the same, stays in place. In these locations, it's already paved with gravel. And so you're looking at having some more bituminous paving there on the edge. What the strategy does is it preserves this side and it allows us to operate in an area where it's just more brushy. So it has limited impacts on any cutting or removal. There's some more illustratives here that just kind of express the character from the building, places where people park that's very tight to the road, to the other side. And so this is that 8-foot shoulder, which is a 31-foot width. This gets us out to 34, so it's another 3 feet to the north. And I'll just keep moving through these so we can kind of get through them. This next one is just past Trail Center, and this is one of the most condensed. I believe it's the tightest section of the road. And so when we're looking at widening the trail here, just to kind of get down to the visuals, which I think help show you the difference here. We can do an 8-foot trail here and be 2 foot wider than this line. This is the existing edge of the pavement through this section of the trail. I don't see a tree in here that would have to go away with the widening. So a lot of different things to consider, but again, with how we are trying to frame it, how can we do this best, the most minimal way to do it, and what are the impacts? There may be a tree here and there, and that's where we could get back to a 6-foot footprint or a 6-foot shoulder footprint. And that stays, really just within the existing edges of the pavement as we have it today. To me, what's the most interesting about this is that Robbie and the county are entertaining this conversation Because it doesn't happen in road design, that you approach it from an aesthetic standpoint. So it's a unique way to think about a road, and if a road demands it, this is certainly the one. This is a section that we're out in the 2-foot gravel shoulder area now. So again, power lines, it gives you kind of the character of what we're looking at. We're calling this kind of I'm sorry, jump forward again. Just to give you this, so this is a proposed 5 or 8 foot road. So the tightest version is 5. So we're looking at moving the edge of road out. We took a hard look at all the engineering plans from before. There's not a lot of true ditch signature here. It does ditch down, but water is moving away or not ditching for long distances. That's an important thing when you're just considering the impacts of the widening of the road, which it means that the whole ditch isn't moving out with the road as well. We can chase these grades down. And so a 5-foot widening of the road results in more or less a 5-foot widening of the grades that chase down to the adjacent lands. So again, the south side of the road is really tight with cover. We have better opportunity for limited impacts on the north side. And then the last section study that we have is in an area, this is getting real close to 92, where we've got a more enclosed situation on both sides of the road. And again, this is that moving away, it slopes down, but it's not a true ditch signature that's conveying water linearly with the river. That works and the benefit of the road condition. And so that section is cut here. That was the tightest spot we could find, and we're getting out to that edge where it's just kind of the natural grade break off of the road with that 3 to 8 foot road width widening. What this means, and it's, I think, a pretty big deal, is that if we're not expanding the road primarily to the south, it means that the center line of the road is moving as well. And so to do that, you need to move the crown of the road with the center line. And the unique opportunity with the grant is that it lets you, it gives you the funding to do that. Like, it's a tough thing to justify in any other situation, but this grant is like the time you could do that. And so it's really just working with new road geometrics and how that layout goes through mid trail. And I think that there's some possibilities there to really kind of minimize things. And Brad Scott, who we mentioned earlier, who said hi, is a transportation road engineer from LHB. And so we've been pouring through, ways of thinking about this and how we could do something. I think in a lot of cases, it's going to be a bike facility, which comes with the standard. That's not what we proposed here. We simply proposed widening shoulders that can meet kind of some safety performance standards without having to go so far that we're designating bikeways or trails and things like that. It seems like a kind of a light touch way to approach that type of condition through mid trail.
It seems like that's what you're gonna have as a result, because there's a bike trail at 92, little tiny red and white sign, and then there's another one at the Lima grade. So I don't know if this would go as far east as right here, basically.
Stop here, yeah.
Yeah, so again, you connect people that bike, you can do Lima grade through Trail Center to County 92 out to Iron Lake.
Cool.
And that's sort of a nice double loop.
Totally intended that.
So that connects.
Thank you. Write that down. Yeah.
What's the thought between the pave, adding the paved shoulder as opposed to leaving it hay? Obviously, the bikers with the skinny tires, paved would be better.
Even walking, maintenance, for us, thinking about it. And I think what's nice with this is we're talking a shoulder, which is something that we can maintain and plow with ease. We've talked in the past about raised trails and stuff like that. The maintenance of that becomes an issue. You introduce a curb and now it's up, it's up above our plows. And honestly, the question was going to come up, who's going to maintain it? I don't know if that was something that we could do. We'd have to haul something up here to do that. Our trucks couldn't do that. They could, they'd screw it up within everything would come out. And so I think with this really, and then to the point with aggregate or paved, when you see it on the hill in town, when you're going down, we have to grade those shoulders a lot. And they wash out, it's bad, it causes erosion issues. And so, to the point of, and we talked about it and thought about it, but I think paving, at the end of the day is gonna be, a better product, be safer for people, biking, walking, whatever. Yeah.
And you mentioned also in the winter, that's plowed.
And it's plowed, so we would be able to plow. Not that we couldn't if it was gravel. So you're just gonna ask?
Yeah.
Okay, but it'd be easier.
My question is, so if we go with the north side.
Sure.
That's where all the mailboxes are.
Well, we're gonna move them all, we just. Yes.
But there's a lot of individual.
Yes.
And that's something too, where if we can at least come out of this, as we discussed. Were there any more? Was that kind of it, CJ, as far as?
This is the last slide we had, so I just brought it back to the mid
Okay,
trail.
perfect, good. Yeah, I think it's something where if we can come away from this discussion, what we heard, kind of the first time was, do we want to do something as far as pedestrian safety, or do we not want to do something as far as pedestrian safety? And so what came out of that was an overwhelming, yes, please do something. Okay. And so now here's a couple of somethings. Do we have an opinion one way or another? North side, both sides, south side, for some reason, I don't think that's a good answer, so I'll explain that for all of us right now. But, and then we can get into the details of that, kind of once we keep moving along. I think that's something that can be easily figured out. Does that answer your question? Okay. So, yeah, at this point, that was it. So I think, if there's we'll do some questions. If there's some online questions too, we'll hang out and kind of do a both online and in-person Q&A for a little bit. There is a link I included in the chat. It's the website. Please go on there. That's gunflinttrailraisegrant.com. You can click around. You can see all the slides we just did. You can leave comments on there too. And so what we're going to do is we'll do a little Q&A of both things, and then we'll actually turn off the online part and we'll just be in person. So before we do more in-person questions, is there any online questions?
I do.
Yes.
Kelly Berg, Siegel Lake. Questions and comments. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, okay. So I was concerned about the mile markers every 5 miles. Like you said, we want less signs, not more signs up here. To me, I think of Highway 61. Why do we need mile marker signs up here on the trail?
It was a comment that had come out of kind of our last discussion of, not only from a safety standpoint, but I think, just from like a, like CJ touched on an experiential, I don't know. I kind of didn't understand it, to be honest, but it was something that came out.
I mean, we already have signs too that say Gunflint Lodge 10 miles from here, whatever. I mean, essentially we have signs that let you know where you are on the trail.
Sure.
Other comments, why so many vaulted toilets? I mean, it seems ridiculous how many toilets you're putting on the trail. There's one spot where you have one on Keck, Magnetic, and Larch, 3 vault toilets within about 5 miles.
It was just, in our conversation with the Forest Service, they had identified a few. I don't think it was as many as what we had proposed. And so again, we just kind of looked at it and kind of added some where we felt, if there was a need. It's not that they are going in at all those spots.
Okay, I mean, because there's some places like Magnetic, there's barely enough parking as it is. Where would you put a toilet? And then I think it would ruin the aesthetics of the hiking trailhead.
That's fair. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, or go ahead, CJ, do you want to?
No, it's good feedback. That's why they're there, is to solicit feedback, these aren't, this is not a pitch. It's trying to get there's sort of a philosophy with these engagement processes, and it's, trying to utilize the local knowledge and make sensible decisions. So they're there as food for thought, and I think your comments are great. We'll be looking better at rhythm, but and on some of those, we don't even know if we have someone to maintain them at this point. So that's also part of the conversation.
Okay, and I have another question about adding more pull-offs, just so that people would pull off. I can tell you, I've been driving the trail, commuting for 17 years, and people don't pull over for you at a pull-off to pull over for the majority of the point. So are you talking about like doing something else at the pull-off, or just having to pull off this, so you think people would pull off to reduce congestion?
Just to pull off.
Yeah, there's one new one proposed, and I tend to agree with you. I don't know that we have any real data that says people will actually use them to let the line of traffic behind them pass by. In theory, it sounds like it could be an idea. I think what we found more so is that there's a pretty regular interval of trailheads and pull-offs that already exist. And you know, there was one stretch there between kind of Swamper Lake and Mid Trail that there was a pretty long stretch that people might get trapped for. I don't know if it was quite even 10 miles, but it was sort of the longest interval. And so we proposed one there and a spot in the road where it could be done safely. But I think that's a big question that I've been talking to Robbie about, is like, will the strategy even work, and should it be done? So thanks for the comments on that.
And then one other comment, I'm on Seagull Lake, so I think there's enough hiking up here with Chickwalk and the other trails. I'm against adding 6 or 7 miles of hiking, and I'm also concerned about the wildlife.
No, it's good points. Again, yeah, we appreciate the input, because it's that kind of stuff that, you know, helps us guide this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Robbie and CJ, couple questions. A project of this magnitude and complexity that we've covered tonight, I believe you're going to have the recording available, and you mentioned that we can go to a website for the overheads you used. Is there a possibility that the beginning now, what about the timeline, activity and timeline? You mentioned 7 years a couple of times. Would you clarify that?
Yeah, happy to. So with federal funds, they're reimbursable programs. And so a lot of times too, with these types of grants, really any federal grant, they ask you a long time in advance what projects you want to do. And so whether it's this scale or even much smaller scales, we have to have, you know, we have to kind of pick a project 6 or 7 years in advance. And so in this case, they wouldn't have funds ready for construction, I think, until 2028.
Okay, thank you. So if it's reimbursement, then I assume that county commissioners and revenues are such that they can advance that.
I'll cut you off quick, sorry, with that. So they reimburse as you do it. So if we started working tomorrow, we wouldn't get reimbursed for that. What we have to be on the hook for is say, all right, 2020, whatever, 7 or 8 rolls around, the project is going, here's the first month's bill. We have to be able to front, you know, $3 million, and then we get reimbursed for that. So we wouldn't start for 6 or 7 years.
Right. So you have to spend it before you get it reimbursed, and I assume it has to come from county funds.
Correct. Yeah, okay. It does. And so what's nice and what's a little unique, or not unique, but how it typically works is the highway department, our department is a separate revenue stream from the county itself. And so, yeah, so it wouldn't be, you know, when you think of like levy dollars or tax dollars, it wouldn't come from that. It would come from, we at the highway department have an undesignated fund balance is what it's called. And it's basically for stuff like this, where ours is healthy enough, thank God, that we can do this. And so we were able to front that kind of money to then get reimbursed for it. But it's, you know, how we deliver these types of projects, how we're also able to do other things. We're doing a couple buildings this year on our highway campus that utilize those funds. And so that's kind of what, yeah, that was a little in the minutia of it, but that's kind of how that goes.
thanks for clarifying. I assume that money comes from road use tax, gas tax, et cetera. But moving on, for this proposal, are you going to put together kind of an objective and timeline
For,
as well as the budget?
Yeah, so the grant is due February 28th. And so that's where, you know, for us, this meeting in particular was a big one of kind of showing, here's draft one of what we're talking about. I know we talked about some conceptuals here and there, and I would encourage folks not to get too into the details of some of that stuff. It's more or less of, yes, we do think we need to do trailhead improvements, you know, of that type of magnitude, you know, stuff like that. And so I think for us, you know, we're going to take a minute and digest after this meeting. Like I said, that website exists. I put it in the chat, and what it is all these boards. It's a comment opportunity, but it also allows us to better communicate with all of you, you know, updates and things, you know, that come out of this. That website's not going to die just because the grant is done. I might take a minute and breathe after this, but for us, it's
Sure, just a couple other quick points. So it would seem like with the passage of time, it might be smart to have a, you know, kind of a, if you can build it into an application, a fine tuning and finalized planning thing, maybe somewhere in the beginning.
Oh, God, yeah, we are by no means done talking about this.
Yeah.
Whether we get the grant or not, you know, if we get it, it's 6 years of these types of discussions of, you know, of really nailing down the details of what we want these to look like. You know, like you said, go ahead, sorry.
That's reassuring, thank you. And
Welcome.
the only other thing is, I wonder how this meshes with, there's a comprehensive plan the county has. I think it was done about 2018. Is there any intention to see how it might mesh with that? A lot of philosophy in the comprehensive plan, but it would be relevant.
No, I think that's a good point. And, you know, that's something we've talked about is looking at that plan and zoning and, you know, what's the best way to serve kind of our community. You know, it's not just about tourists, it's about those of us that live here, and that also recreate here. And so how do we do that? So I think it's a good point, and it's a thing for us to consider in this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll do I don't know, a couple more online, and then I think we might, you know, leave the online community. Please leave your comments on the website in the chat. So if there are a couple more questions online.
I have a question. Oh,
oops, sorry.
The chat, I don't see the website link.
Not there? Oh. Thought I put it there.
Gunflinttrailraisegrant.com.
Here, I'll type it.
Right off.
I'll type it right now. Yeah, it's a little, that's all right. Everyone in the meeting here, I'll type it right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about that.
No problem. Good job, by the way.
Thank you. All right, let me know if that goes through.
It did. Came out.
Yeah. Right. One more question online.
Spence?
No more. No more questions?
I do have a question.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Well, actually, I have two questions. I hope that's okay. Can you describe what the decision-making process will look like, assuming you get the grant?
As far as like the final details and stuff?
Correct.
You know, it comes out of community engagement like this. So, you know, as we talk tonight, and I want everyone to think about too, you know, I have a preference on what I think, you know, the widened shoulder should look like through mid trail. I'll put my vote in for putting it on the north side. But, you know, ultimately, if nobody else wants that, you know, I kind of want that to guide it. And so really, it's kind of that what I hear. You know, so please call me, email me, let me know, you know, what you think. And that's what really helps guide that.
Okay. And then another question. Who will be maintaining all of these trails and pull-offs and pumping the toilets and emptying the trash and plowing and
it would be whoever does it now. So plowing, for example, would be us. trailhead maintenance. I think that's under the Forest Service banner, and that's why these partnerships are so important. Is that we talk, we have been engaging with the Forest Service saying, hey, if we do this, are you okay with this? Okay, maintaining it. And so far it's been a yes on a lot of things. And that's why you see the things that you see as kind of that engagement with our partners on it.
Rob,
Thank you.
Rob, if your deadline for application is February 25th, when is the announcement date?
End of June. Yeah, it's February 28th, whatever. We'll get into the details. Yeah. But then, yeah, sometime in June, end of June. Wonderful. Well, we're going to keep talking in person. I just want to give time to everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Go to the website, leave your comments. And I appreciate it. Thank you everyone online for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question regarding an ongoing discussion that I haven't really seen addressed specifically with this proposal, and that is the idea of safety with speeding, especially through the mid-trail area, which has been discussed, as you know, with various